Good Saturday evening, everybody. Hope you've had a pleasant week and a great start to your weekend. The comically oversized snifter has returned. We'll see for how long, because this is going to be a dice roll. Up to this point, the oldest beer that we have tried, I slide it in. Thankfully, it's a smaller bottle, but we will see. We've got a little medallion thing right there. And this right here is Thomas Hardy's Ale. Very distinct looking label. It is a tiny little bottle. 11.7%. 2003. This is number 00592 edition. Oh boy. Brewed and bottled by O'Hanlon's Brewing Company. It was in Wimple back then, but now they're in Exeter, in Devonshire, the county of Devonshire, United Kingdom, in the English side. So shout out to my brother Goza. This is what they call an old ale. See, here you go. Bottles of this rare bottle-conditioned ale have kept for at least 25 years, maturing in flavor like a fine wine. And that is true. I have had this beer before. Years ago, we did push the limit. It was from a bottle from 1987, so it was probably almost 30 years old at that point. And by that point, it had gone the way of the dodo. But the thing about this one is, if it gets really bad, I'm going to know it pretty much immediately, because essentially it's going to smell like soy sauce. But we're going to get in absolutely no carbonation. That actually doesn't shock me. That's not the part I'm worried about. Here's the part I'm worried about. No! Koi! Nope. Oh. Let's just see how bad it is, and then we're going to rerun the intro. All right, let's just give it a second. Oh. Nope. 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 Well, unfortunately, the Thomas Hardy's Ale did not work out, but luckily I always plan ahead, and we do have a backup, and it's also an old one. So stay tuned. I'll be back with a different glass, a different beer, and we will try this again. Whew. Well, that was certainly a thing. I don't think my sink liked that very much. Take two! The Tulip glass has returned, and yeah, that was just... Nah. Because I know what was going to come from that, and it wasn't going to be good. But this is another old one. We slide her in. It's going back to the old, reliable Dogfish head from Milton, Delaware. This is the Raison d'Extra. It is a much heavier version of their Raison d'Etre. D-E''E', I think d'Etre. I'm not actually 100% sure how that's pronounced. But this is 18%. This bulbous brown ale was brewed with bucket loads of big old raisins. God, just stop it. Anyway, again, 18%. And where is the date? It is ink-jetted on here somewhere. Hold on. Bear with. Talk amongst yourselves a moment. I will find it. I have seen it before. And I will get to it in a moment. Actually, pause. I'm going to find it. Okay, there. I'm back. There it is. It is... This is bottled on... Well, it's 2014. I did write it down before, and I think the more it stayed in the fridge, it did get a little wiped off. But this is from 2014, so... Whew... Man, I'm still feeling that in my soul. We're moving up. Oh, there we go. Carbonation. That's going to be a beautiful thing. Oh, yes. We actually have a beer that smells like actual beer and not... Oh, I don't even want to describe what that was, but it's in my mind nose. Let's put it that way. But this will be at least a little better, and it's actually kind of fitting considering what we're going to talk about in just a moment. So stay tuned. We're actually going to flip this time, and we're going to talk some nonsense, and more than likely, Barry, if you're watching this, you're going to have a laugh at me. So bear with me. Well, we've survived so far. We don't need this one anymore because this was notes about the Thomas Hardy's Ale, but man, I'm just feeling that in my soul, in my gut, in wherever you want to put it. Like I said, my mind knows, which is actually located right around here. That's going to be in there a long time. This one's much better. It doesn't smell like, and here's the thing, I was spot on. That smelled like a combination of rancid soy sauce mixed with some sort of dirt. And depending on how long you sniffed it, that dirt may or may not have been from a barn on a farm. Let's put it that way. It was not good. This, much better. Oh, this actually has a malt sweetness. It's sweet. It's not horrifying. You know, as I've said many times on this channel, I'll take the win wherever I can get it. So yeah, the Dogfish Head saving the day. Whew! And that's why I always keep a backup one in the fridge just in case. But I do smell raisins. Normally that would be a bad thing, because normally that would mean it's starting to turn. But because this is brewed with raisins and the label's coming off, this is a good thing. So 18% also. This one aged, hopefully. Well, let's see. Yeah, that one aged like a fine wine. Dark, malty, that dark fruit, raisin sweetness, a little bit of malt bitterness. We're in business. Pardon me. So, what are we talking about this week? Well, you've seen the thumbnail. And it was weirdly fitting that the first beer was absolutely a crime against nature and humanity in general. Because tonight, we're going to talk about the history of chewing gum / bubble gum in baseball cards. Sports cards, but baseball cards more to the point. Initially, I had thought that the gum in cards started with tops in the 1950s. Yeah, no, it goes further back than that. Gary, if you're watching this, don't. Because I have to tell you a little story before I tell you this story. We have to go back to the origin of baseball cards in general, which the earliest that they've found so far, and I'm going to be putting up some pictures here. There's an 1872 card, and then, one later from the 1880s. But this baseball cards as a whole started sometime in the early 1860s, so during the U.S. Civil War. But the one thing they have found out at the present time, the first confirmed mass-produced baseball set came around in 1868 by a company called Peck & Snyder. It was a sporting goods store located in New York City. They began producing trading cards featuring baseball teams to go along with the sporting goods that they sold. And obviously, if you think about it, that is a perfect marketing vehicle. We're selling like baseball equipment and sporting good equipment. Well, why not have cards of baseball teams? It's, I use this often. To quote George Carlin, fairly simple concept, happens to work. And as far as historians go, up to this point, they do consider the Peck & Snyder 1868 cards to be the origin, the genesis of the mass-produced baseball card trading set, or baseball trading card set, I should say. So, we're going to move up a little bit. We're going to go out of the 1860s. We're going up into the 1880s with the dominance of the tobacco cards. We have seen those, the little ones. Tobacco companies would put them as little add-ons in packs of cigarettes. That practice eventually died out because who's the target market, or at least back in the day, who was the target market for trading cards? Kids. That's right, kids. And by that point, by the end of World War I, so we're looking the end of World War I, so the early 1920s, we're looking at the government said, no, you cannot put baseball cards in tobacco products because tobacco is not permitted to be bought by children anymore. Funny thing is, I have to say anymore because back in the day, it was a lot different. Obviously, the most famous, that one right there, the T206 Honus Wagner. Not many of them were made. Those ones in particular were only made 1909 to 1911. There are not many of them left, and the ones that are left are worth a metric lot. I can't say what I want to say because it's YouTube, but they're worth a lot. Part of the reason, and honestly, a big part of the reason to bring about the downfall of the tobacco cards themselves, they still made them later up until the 30s, that kind of style, but they weren't actually in cigarettes much anymore, was Honus Wagner himself did not like the idea of kids having to buy cigarettes to get his baseball card. He was very adamant about it, so much so to the point where that card, like I say, only ran for 3 years and was not produced a lot of because, the Flying Dutchman said so. And in the early 1900s, the Flying Dutchman's word carried a lot of weight. So now, essentially, we have gone the way of the dodo with the tobacco cards. We're getting to the gum in a minute, but this is a good story. So, as with any good story, we must take a sip of beer. And like I said, this has aged like a fine wine. Granted, here's the irony. I do not like wine. I don't get it. I don't like the flavor of it. Red wine gives me severely bad heartburn. I'm just not a fan of red wine. I know, my mom is, my stepmom is, a lot of people are. Not this guy. Do not do the wine. Can't do it. I've tried it, and to use a phrase my dad always used to use with me, giving me like a good bottle of wine is essentially like feeding strawberries to a pig. It's going to eat it, but it's not going to understand just how good it is. I digress. Sip. Easy, Zach. It's 18%. And weirdly, it doesn't taste like 18%. It actually tastes about as strong as the 5.5% porter I had yesterday. All right. So here we go. Now we're getting to the crux of the whole story. The gum. Where did the gum come from? Well, there is some evidence that the first company to actually put gum in baseball cards goes back even further. Much further than Topps in 1950. It goes back even before Topps itself came around. Topps as a company came around in 1938. But there was a company called H.D. Smith & Company. It was a Cincinnati-based company that started in 1856 that may have been the first to include baseball cards with gum. An ad that mentions H.D. and Smith's products in a magazine called Leslie's is dated to October the 27th, 1888. And I copied the ad, and we're going to read the ad. A novel production, and again, this is from 1888. A novel production of theirs this season is the St. Louis and Detroit Championship Baseball Gum. A piece of gum with a perfect lithograph picture of one of the champion 9 in the National League or American Association on each piece. Okay, that would have been cool. The pictures were made to order in Germany and are wonders in their own way. That's a beautiful ad. That is truly a beautiful ad. Unlike, what do these guys say? The bulbous brown ale with boatloads of raisins. That is a beautiful ad. So they have actually found, cards from that era. I don't think, obviously, the gum didn't exist. But that ad from 1888 speaks volumes about H.D. and Smith Company because they've found some cards with the HDSC, the H.D. and Smith Company logo on them. I think one of the pictures I showed had that. So now we move to the 1930s, the early 1930s. So a few years before Topps came around, we have the Goody, Goudey. I don't know, is it Goody or Gowdy? I'm not 100% sure. I always pronounced it Goody. But in any event, the Goody Gum Company, that also produced trading cards itself, began putting sticks of gum in the packs in the early 1930s. So here comes Topps in 1938, and they pretty much immediately become the dominant force in the trading card industry because they went to the MLBPA, the Players Association, and secured everybody's favorite term, especially these days, the licensing from Major League Baseball to produce cards with the players and the logos on there. And then, here it was, 1952 was the first year that Topps put a stick of gum in a pack of baseball cards. And that's where I initially thought it began, was the 1952 Topps was the first set. So now, here you go. This, I liked it. You think about it, it's a fairly simple idea. Put a piece of gum into a pack of cards. And now, here's where Topps' marketing comes in. For a nickel, back in those days, in the 50s, you could pick up a pack of sports cards, about 6 cards a piece. Inside, you'd find that lovely, cracked, brittle, garbagey gum, which it always has been. There are reports that, and somebody in fact put it, was the gum of good quality? Absolutely not. But the fact remains is that it had it. It was an additional little treat and kind of an incentive for kids, because for the same price, you pay the nickel, you're going to get a pack of cards that has 6 cards in it. Which do you think a kid is going to prefer, even if the gum is of mediocre quality? The one with gum or the one without gum? Exactly. Same price and you get more. It's a no-brainer, even for kids in the 1950s. And basically, from that point, Topps continued to dominate the trading card, the baseball card industry especially. Gum was included in a lot of the packs. And now we move up to the 1980s. This is 1981. Here comes the other manufacturers. Major dispute between the manufacturers. Topps, Donruss, and Fleer. Those were the big ones that started waging war. Now, because essentially up until 1981, and it is kind of like it is now, just saying, I'm not saying anything in particular, I'm just giving you information to allow you guys to make the informed decision. Topps essentially had a monopoly on baseball card production thanks to, the licensing with the Major League Baseball and the Players Association. In 1981, Donruss and Fleer joined together, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, and challenged the monopoly in court challenged the monopoly not in court yet, but just in general by producing their own sets of baseball cards. And this is why they were able to do it, both Donruss and Fleer also secured licensing from the Major League Baseball Players Association to get the rights to put emblems on the uniforms and the cards, in the players on the cards in general. And this marked, and honestly, since the 50s, this was the first time that Topps actually had a legitimate challenger in the baseball card industry. And obviously, there were other things being put out. They were doing other sets, and OPC was up in Canada, and they were doing their own thing. But this was the first time in the United States Topps actually faced some sort of competition in the baseball card industry. We're going to pause for a sip because we're actually almost done. Thankfully, the dual intro definitely took some extra time. God, I still smell it, and I still feel like the rumbling in my stomach. You know what'll calm it? This. Yeah, it's getting more flavorful as it warms up. So now, we go back to the gum for a minute. The dispute over the gum arose from a stipulation in Topps' licensing agreement that required the inclusion of a piece of gum in every pack of cards that Topps produced. Period. Every pack of cards, I should say, produced by Topps from the 1950s up until this point were required by their agreement to have a stick of gum in it. Now, Donruss and Fleer, they want to get into the market, as they rightfully would, and led to a glorious time for collectors because you had sets to choose from all over the place. Now, and there's no arguing this. Donruss and Fleer argued, rightfully so, the gum damaged the cards. We've all seen it. Anybody that has ever opened a pack of junk wax era baseball cards, especially old tops, you've seen the gum stain. We've seen the gum stain. We've seen the gum stuck to the front of cards. You've seen that when I've done some Jank Pack Thursdays. You know, some of the old cards from the 90s that Tim sent me, and you hold up the card and the gum is stuck to it. And obviously, when you pull that off, even fresh, you pull it off after so long, the cardboard's coming with it. And then also there was some really extreme cases where it actually bled through to the front of the card. And you know what? It got so much to the point that I think even PSA itself, the grading card, or the major grading company for sports cards, at least for the time, essentially began to classify the gum-stained cards as their own entity, just because it was so prevalent. And you think there were a lot of great, great cards, like Hall of Fame cards, that were just ruined because of the gum. And, you know, with the damage to the card, even fresh out of the pack, what does that do? Immediately decreases the value. And they argued, and rightfully so. So, Donruss and Fleer files lawsuits against Topps claiming that the gum requirement was anti-competitive and it violated federal antitrust laws. Legal battle took many, many years, but ultimately, Donruss and Fleer came into their own. And they started having a big share of the market. And Donruss then spun off, it was Fleer. Was it Fleer or Donruss? Spun off to Leaf. I think it was Donruss back in the 80s. And there you have it. Now, we have to get to the very end. Very end of the gum era. That one right there, 1991 Topps. That was the last year for Topps basically putting chewing gum, quote unquote, chewing bubble gum, in cards. Sets continued to do it later, but pretty much by 1995, all of the gum was out. But after 91, essentially, they kind of went back to the old days, the old way of doing it. And we saw it with the Michael Jackson cards I did on Jank Pack Thursday. I'm just shouting out. I'm just really plugging the crap out of Jank Pack Thursday in this one. They would individually wrap them. Some sets occasionally, up until even like the mid-2000s, maybe even to this day, I cannot say for a fact, but they do say that up until like even 2004, 2005, some sets would produce some cards with gum as essentially a gimmick. But again, and I found this, let's go Jank Pack Thursday again, the Flintstones cards, which were 95-ish, 93, 94, 95, somewhere in there. They would have gum in there as a gimmick, but it was individually wrapped, which is why it actually maintains some of its gum-like texture, which still, to this day, the combination of that and the smell of the rancid Thomas Hardy's ale is making me feel a little weird. But I had to talk about it. I had to talk about it because we're up to, 186, 187 or so episodes of Jank Pack Thursday. Over 70 of them have had chewing gum in them. And I've done them all. I don't know why. Brian? Look at me. Brian? Right here. That's all I'm saying. And I'm trying to remember. I'm actually legitimately trying to remember back when I was a kid opening up sets that had gum and it was quote-unquote fresh, what it tasted like. Honestly, I could not tell you. More than likely, it didn't taste good. It probably tasted like, those little candy hearts that you got around Valentine's Day? Yeah, it tasted like essentially chalk mixed with candle wax, and maybe like they showed it to a bottle of flavoring to quote unquote give it some flavor. But what a time. What a time for sporting cards. And again, this went back so much further than I had thought. Because, like, when I met Gary B, the casual comic guy, shout out to him just because he's an awesome guy. I'll put a link to him down below. We love Gary. I met up with him at a comic shop in Rochester a while ago, and he was asking me, he's like, what was the earliest they put gum into baseball cards? A quick Google search from the comic shop, it led me to the 1950s, 1952 tops. I don't know if I said 1952, but I did say it was probably in the 1950s. But it's crazy to think how much further back it was. And then it begs the question. Let's revisit the ad from Leslie's magazine in 1888. A piece of gum with a perfect lithograph picture of one of the champion 9 of the National League or American Association on each piece. What in the name of all that is holy, unholy, or whatever adjective you want to throw in there, what was that made of? In the 1870s, let's say. What was that made of? Guarantee you, I've made the joke many times about, I love the taste of asbestos on a Thursday. It makes you wonder. Like, number one, what was the gum made of? And number two, what was the ink made of that was being put onto the gum in the 1870s that came from Germany? My bet, there was probably some lead in there, at the very least. But that aside, I'm glad we actually got to a good beer. Oh, man. I do apologize. I really wanted to like that. I really wanted to try that one because I haven't had it in forever. But unlike with old... And how many times have I been on a Thursday when I wish I could have just said, you know what? No, I don't feel like eating this. I'm going to go get, something else. At that point, anything. Like packing peanuts probably would have been better than some of the gum I've eaten. But I'm still here, still talking to you guys. Condolences on that, by the way. Whew. That was... Now it's just in my mind, like, how many times could I have just ducked out of it by saying, nah, I'm not going to? But no, I committed to the bit, and I will remain committed to the bit as long as I'm still on the YouTubes. Well, cheers to that. But I had to put that out there. I was sitting there the other day and I was thinking, all right, what am I going to do? We talked about the Mountain West yesterday. And I'm like, what am I going to do? And then it hit me. Why not talk about gum and cards? Like, that's kind of my shtick. Again, if anybody wants to take it, anybody on YouTube, you want to take the mantle of it from me, I will not fight you. But yet, don't see anybody lining up to do it. Yet. There will be others. Somebody will join me at some point. I see people doing it, and I'm happy for it. I know Vince, sports card ripping teacher, did it. Brandon Jensen's done it a few times. Many other people have refused to, rightfully so. 'Tis a good time. But that is going to do it for this week. Next week, what's coming up? Another football conference. We're almost done with the Division I FCS. And I have no idea what we're going to talk about on Saturday. But needless to say, next week is Thanksgiving in America. What better way to celebrate the harvest than at the end of November? But, for all of you guys, I'm going to give it to you in advance. Have a very, very safe Thanksgiving if you're traveling anywhere, because as I found out when working at the bar, not only is the day before Thanksgiving the busiest travel day in the United States, but also the busiest day at the bars. The worst time to be working the door at a bar, which I had to do many occasions, is work the day before Thanksgiving. It is rough because everybody is going to have to spend the next day with their families. You can do the math. But either way, that's going to do it. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Let me know what you thought down below. This was a fun one to talk about because it combines all of my loves and one of my tolerances. You know, beer, BSing with you guys, history, and the tolerance, gum. You know, I actually have not eaten a piece of gum since I started the whole Jank Pack Thursday thing. Like, I've been offered it. I remember one time, I think when I went home for Christmas or something, my sister asked me if I wanted gum. I did not. It's been a while. But that said, I'm going to lift one more time to all of you guys. If you're having one along with me, cheers, my friends, because we're going to Delaware on this one. So, you know, let's butcher English as we normally do. That's getting, now the alcohol heat is starting to come out a little bit. Yeah, that's just good. That's going to do it. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Let me know what you thought down below, and I'm going to leave you with this final parting thought. Think about the following 3 words: heat, pressure, and time. The 3 things that can make a diamond are also the same 3 things that make a waffle. Have a good night, everybody.